Okay, well, today we have, I always say a fun one, but we really do. We have somebody that I've wanted on the show for quite some time, and it's just a thrill to have him on. His name, of course, you're going to know right away. He played Ralph the Melf on Happy Days. He's been in a lot of television movies, and it's just a thrill to have him here. And by the way, he's a fantastic musician and vocalist himself. So, Don Most. Don, great to have you on.
John, great to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Believe me, it's a thrill. So, right from the get-go, what do you remember? I did a lot of research on you and stuff like that, but
Oh yeah.
I didn't get anything really on like what was your initial audition like for Happy Days, like that whole process.
Oh yeah. Um, well, I my first my first meeting was to meet two of the executive producers, Tom Miller and Garry. Not oh, Garry wasn't at that one. Tom Miller and Ed Milkus, and and it was really just kind of they wanted to meet me and talk to me, and it wasn't that first one. It was not an audition
Hmm.
as much as just a meeting, and then my agent called me and said, they really liked you and want you to prepare this particular scene for to do an audition, and Garry Marshall would be there, who's the creator of the show. But so when I got there, it was Garry in this room with about 10 other people,
Yeah.
and um, and I did this, and they paired me up with an actor named Barry Miller, who went on to do some really interesting work in Saturday Night Fever and
Huh.
a movie called The Chosen with Robby Benson. Um, but anyway, so I was paired up with Barry, and I did we did the scene, and it was a little nerve wracking with so many people in this room.
Yeah.
Um, but then they called my agent back and said they really liked Don's audition, and or his Donnie's audition, and they're going to do a screen test. So that was the big one. The screen test was the big one because and that was at Paramount Studios on one of the sound stages, in a set that they used some set that they already had built, and Garry was directing all the screen tests. But there were about, I don't know, and I was reading for the role of Potsy, and
Wow.
there were about six or seven, maybe five, six other actors reading for Potsy and Richie, including Anson Williams and Ron Howard.
Oh,
Ron
wow.
Ron was having to screen test, and so was Anson. And the crazy thing is that Ron and Anson had already done a pilot, Happy Days type pilot, about a year and a half earlier. It had Marion Ross in as the mother again,
Mhm.
and but a different dad and a different Joni, and there was no Ralph, there was no Fonzie, and they did this, but it didn't sell. The network didn't pick it up, and they put it on Love American Style to get some mileage out of it.
Yeah.
But then, later in the year, Grease becomes a big hit on Broadway, the play musical about the 50s.
Yeah.
And then American Graffiti came out that summer, which we all know, a great film of taking place in the 50s. And then ABC, I think, reconsidered and said, well, maybe we should think about doing this. So they went to Garry and said, we'd like to, think about do a pilot doing a pilot episode. But they were concerned that maybe Ron and Ance would be a little too old now because it was almost 2 years later.
Oh my
But
gosh.
so they had to screen test, and so did I. I was there with, like I said, but for other people, and all the other Potsies were in the same exact clothes. We were all in the same clothes that they put us in.
Was it
Um,
anybody that you recognized, by the way, as other actors?
I didn't know any of the other actors who were screen testing for Potsy, but ironically, here Robby Benson was screen testing for Richie.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so that was interesting. And I knew Robby from New York. We had done a commercial together. It's now become like this. You could see it on some of these, like old TV retro stuff. It was a Reese's peanut butter
Oh,
commercial.
is that the one where like both your heads are pretty close?
Yeah. Well, when I was, he's walking down the street having his, peanut butter or something, and I'm coming down this angle with the chocolate, and then we bump into each other and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, you got chocolate on my peanut butter, you got peanut butter," and then we taste it, and I said, "Oh, it's pretty good," It was that. So that I knew Robby from back then, and this was about 2 years later.
Wow.
So anyway, but that was a harrowing day. It was a long day, and they made you do a scene. We had to do a scene, and then you had to wait while everyone else did. Then they brought everyone back one at a time to do an improv, and then you had to go back and wait. And then they brought everyone back to do like a on-camera interview, just to So it was grueling because you knew there was a lot of pressure on for this, and I had only been out in California about 4 months now, something like that, from New York.
Wow.
So that was the process.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a bit intimidating. I mean, I have an acting background myself, and I'm just thinking to be there with the other actors, and they're right there. Like they're right there that you're going up against, and you're doing your scene right in front. I mean, that is intimidating.
Well, I don't think they wouldn't be in on the set when we were doing the scene. They wouldn't let the other. They didn't have the other actors there.
Okay.
But while you were waiting to go on there, you're kind of milling around and maybe trying to keep your own space. But it's hard not to see, the other actors.
Yeah.
But at least we didn't have to do, that would have been weird doing it. They didn't want each actor to see what the other actor was doing. They wouldn't want that,
Right.
But then I turned it down because,
what?
because I had auditioned for the role of Potsy, right?
Yeah.
Which was going to be one of the two leads at the beginning. It was Richie and Potsy. But then around the same time, I had auditioned for a TV movie that I was very excited about, because I was much more interested in doing drama when I got out there. Comedy, I knew I could do comedy if the script was well written and funny, but I wasn't like, oh, I'm a comedian or anything. I'm an actor I could play comedy, I could play drama, and I was more interested in drama. The first few roles I got out there were dramatic roles. Emergency, I played a guy who became paralyzed in a car accident. Police Story, I played this psychopathic mad bomber. So
Jesus.
So I'm now reading for this TV movie, and it was being directed by a director named Buzz Kulick, who had directed the original Brian song, which was like one of the great TV movies and highest rated. And I'm going, oh wow, he's directing this, and it was written by Herman Raucher, who wrote The Summer of 42,
right,
which was a movie that I loved back then. And I'm going, and it was a really good script taking place during World War II, but in the States, not like a war movie, but at home. And so I auditioned around the same time, and it went great. And my agent said, "You have a really good chance of getting this. They're just waiting to see who's going to play the uncle, and they think it'll match up perfectly. Jack Warden they wanted, but they wouldn't hear for a while. So, but we decided on that Friday night, let's go for the TV movie when they offered me the Happy Days. So they passed."
Wow.
So it's crazy, a crazy story. And then, as fate would have it, my agent happened to play basketball every Saturday at Garry Marshall's house.
What are the chances?
I know. So he's at the game, and then during a break in the game, Garry takes my agent over to the side and says, what's with your boy turning us to what's going on, and my agents told him what's going, and he said, well, um, they basically upped the offer and said, instead of 7 out of 13, we'll guarantee him 10 out of 13 episodes, and more money, a little bit more money. And then after the weekend, my agent told me, and I said, yeah, but what about the TV movie? They said, well, they're not going to know for like at least a week. You have a great chance, but we don't know for sure. And this one is, a firm offer. And what if that one doesn't work out? And then, it was a tough decision. And
Wow.
ultimately decided to take it.
Oh,
It's
is
crazy.
that funny?
Yeah. When I think back to that, it's pretty, it has more impact, that story, now than, back then it was like, I don't know, it was a normal course of events or something.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. And you do a good Gary, by the way. I happen to have been fortunate enough to have met him on a couple of occasions, and you hit it right on the head the way you did the whole. That was funny.
Garry was pretty inimitable.
Yeah, you don't forget him after you meet him. That's for sure. You never forget him. So, you come to Hollywood, but I noticed that you had gone to Leihigh University and you leave the summer of your junior year. I just found that odd. Like, why wasn't it like, end of your senior year and you're heading out to go pursue your acting career?
Right.
What was the thought process there?
Yeah. Well, what happened was I was already thinking about, I'm in my junior year, and it's getting around spring, and there was someone I knew that was going to be going out to California, and they said, why don't you go, come out when I'm out there, because you can meet agents and people like that, so that when you're done with school a year later, you'll already have made the contacts, and you can hit the ground running if you get an agent, that sort of thing. So I went out there and I was able to meet. I'd been doing a lot of work in New York, doing a lot of TV commercials, some big national commercials, little TV, but there wasn't a lot of TV being done in New York then. So, I was able to go. I had introductions to one or two agents, because the agent in New York knew the ones on the West Coast. So I took a few meetings, and then this one agency that I really liked, they handled, people like Ed Asner and some other really good character actors, and they wanted to sign me. So, but in my mind, it's like, okay, I'm gonna this in the spring, okay, so this is great for when I come out a year later.
Yeah.
But then I decided, this other friend was going to be out there for the summer. I said, well, maybe I'll come out for the summer too, and see what I can get going. And I registered for summer school at UCLA, so I don't know where to stay, but it was a perfect place to hang out. And then I got sent out on some auditions, and I landed, a couple pretty quickly, and so it was like I got room 222 and the emergency, and then I'm all set to go. I fly back to New York because I'm gonna go get my senior year. I'm getting ready to move up to the apartment with my friends for my senior year. But I'm at my sister's wedding, and I flew home and got there, and my manager, who was at the wedding, took me aside and said, I had a long talk with your agent, and they think you could do really well. You got some momentum. The season's getting busy. They think, why don't you take 6 months off? You can go back to school, but you got some momentum going. Why don't you just keep, let's see what happens. And then, you can go back to, if it's not happening, 6 months, you go back to school. And I didn't even have to think. There was no thinking. It was, yes. That was it. And my parents, were pretty not loving the idea and the concern. I said, well, I could come back. So anyway, I did. I flew right back a day too later. I fly back out to LA. And then it was several months. I got another part. I guess Emergency was then. I got that right away. But then there was nothing for about almost 2 months. And I'm going on. I had a few auditions, but I didn't. Nothing happened. And then there was
Wow.
nothing. And then The Happy Days and that TV movie came up at the same time.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah, crazy.
I mean, you have the true Hollywood story. And by the way, you cracked me up. It's like, my agent was at Garry Marshall's playing basketball. My manager happened to be at my sister's wedding. I mean, I love it. It just kind of,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she would have talked to me even if she wasn't at the wedding. She would have relayed the story from the agent,
right.
But yeah, there was some serendipitous, occurrences and some fate, I guess.
Oh yeah. Now you were, as you said, that first season, like 10 out of 13, you were a secondary character on the show, but then second season you move in, you're primary. You're the primary character. How did that, you're like more front build, however you want to put it. How did that feel?
It felt great, yeah, in the beginning, yeah, I was definitely a sort of peripheral character, especially, the first 4 episodes or something like that. It was the scripts were already kind of written and they had me, I'd be in a scene in the early part of the thing, but at Arnold's or out in the parking lot or something and be a funny little bit. And then Richie and Potsy would get caught up in what the story was. It would be around them. And then you'd meet Fonzie for, he'd say a couple of lines and then maybe I'd be in one more scene at the end,
Yeah.
But then, they liked what I was doing, and Jerry Paris was our director, and we got along great, and he was a fantastic director. He did all the Dick Van Dyke shows, and,
Oh,
so
huge.
and we got along, and I was trying to come up with things that might not be in the script, add some things to it,
Yeah.
and Jerry loved it, and and then he'd get an idea. So we started doing things, and the writers liked it, and then they started doing a little more for me, and it started building. So even by the middle of season 1 or something, I was getting involved more and more. And season 2, same thing. It really was. I was now like one of the guys, and not the guy out on the perimeter of the court.
Yeah, you were like, I mean, I can picture a lot of different moments. I think even in the credits, like it's you're in the back seat, and you got Potsy and or Ron and Anson in the front, and you're like right there. It's like you start to
Right.
think of you guys as a three guys,
Yeah.
buddies,
Right. Exactly. So I felt great about that because you know, I, I improved my position. I moved up, and so I was very excited about that, and I was loving shooting. We had such a great cast, and we all got along so well professionally and personally,
Hmm.
and with Jerry Paris as our director and Garry Marshall. Although we didn't see Garry as much in the first season or two, because he was still running the show of The Odd Couple. So
Oh,
but then when The Odd Couple was over, then we started seeing Garry a lot more, especially when we went 3 camera, where we'd shoot in front of we switched from shooting it like a movie to shooting it in front of an audience in the third season. And then we'd see Garry all the time, because we would have run throughs, and then the writers and producers and the actors would sit around and we talk about where the things that might be able to be improved, or we having problems here, and Garry would be there heading these meetings with the writers and us. So then it was like, it was a joy. I would just sit there and just soak it all in.
wow.
I'd love to watch with the other actors do stuff. And in the first 2 seasons, I used to hang around even when I was done for the day. I would stay. I wanted to watch Tom Bosley and Marion and Ron and Anson and then Henry. It was like, this who is this guy? You know, I mean, we got along great. We were both from New York, and I saw what he was doing, and it was like, whoa, he's, you couldn't help but get pulled in and
Yeah.
get excited and kind of marvel at what he was doing.
I wanted to tell you about my friend Marina Coates' YouTube channel, Mockingbird Lane, where she recreates the Happy Days house, all the interior of it, as well as Arnold's restaurant, plus other television homes. She does just an excellent job. So once again, that's Mockingbird Lane, Marina Coates. Here we go. Back to Don Most. Enjoy. Yeah, he's, it's funny. Well, first of all, two things. When was the first time that you met him? And the other one is, I know you're from Flatbush, which I think is just an ironic little coincidence that he also came out and his movie was The Lords of Flatbush.
Lords of Flatbush, right?
Kind of ironic.
It is. It is. I remember that. So I'm not sure what the question.
Well, when was the first time you met him? Do you remember the first time you actually met Henry?
I think what happened was they brought us all in for wardrobe fittings and getting their sizes and to meet everybody would meet. And I think I remember when I met Henry, he seemed guarded at the beginning. He was a little bit, he seemed like very introspective and not that interactive. It was almost like he was starting to get into the character a little. I don't know, but then even in the beginning, in the first episode or two, it was like that. But then I think we all started to relax and feel comfortable with each other and really like what we were doing mutually. And then, then I got to see who Henry really was, and we became really great friends.
By the way, I mean, I know, and I don't think it's a big secret, you and Anson Williams are literally best friends.
Yeah.
When did you first kind of like start to really, feel like there's a little bit more here than just two actors? We're like buds.
Well, it's interesting that during the series, we were all close, we were all very close. And our friendship took on a whole other level years later. It's been in the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years. It was like, because everyone was busy, he was directing a lot of television. I was doing, still acting, of course, and I was in New York for a while, and we'd see each other once in a while. But then we got together, we played together in a softball game, and it was years later. And then he said, oh, there's a thing I'm directing, and maybe it would be great if you consider doing a guest role. And so I did, and he directed me, and then that brought us a little bit closer again, and because hadn't been on the show for a while. And then he was living 20 minutes away from us, and we just started, getting together more often. It just started growing, and to the point where we're just, it's like a whole new level of, best friends.
I love that. I just think that that's an awesome, part of this story. And then in the case of Henry, Henry takes off on a, like a rocket as Fonzie.
Especially the third season is when it really exploded.
Yeah. How was that for you and like the rest of the cast? I mean, was it great or was it kind of odd or what was that like?
No, it was great. It was great. I mean, we loved what Henry was doing with the role. And there never was that, sort of friction or tension or, competition, jealousy. I think we were just, we became number one show, and we knew that Henry, played a big role in the meteoric success in that season. And so we, we were thankful, and I mean, he was getting so much attention, there might have been a few times where you're kind of like, oh, what am I, chopped liver or whatever,
Right.
but 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 it was all kept together. We had such a great role models. Jerry was like an uncle, and he loved actors, and he would talk to us and invite us over. I'd be at his house, on weekends, and he'd invite us all over, and
Wow.
and he and he kind of kept us grounded, more level-headed. And then you had Ron Howard, who'd been a star for years, and he was very down to earth and like a normal guy, and not getting all wrapped up in, like, oh, now we're big shots, now
Yeah.
we're and same thing. And Garry was a great influence, that and Tom, so we were like a family. And so it never got into any of that real negative kind of stuff.
Wow, that's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Did you, by the way, as I said, I have a background as an actor, and when I think of like a role, like in your case, Ralph the Mouth, you start out and like as you said, they had to do smaller things, whatever. Did you create any kind of a bio or anything for yourself in, creating Ralph?
Did I create a bio? Oh, you mean like a history for
Yeah,
him?
like an actor's bio or anything to kind
Yeah.
of get you there.
I sort of did that on a. I didn't, like I did later on. Um, Later on, a few years later, then I started writing out, all these, like a history for the character, and comparisons to things in my life
Hmm.
that could connect me to what the character's going through, and all the objectives, and
Yeah.
what ifs, and all this stuff. But and I did some of that for the Ralph character, but I think it was driven in the beginning more like, because I wasn't like that. I wasn't like that in high school. I was I was quiet, and with my close friends I'd be a little more, but I was kind of shy. I wasn't the comedian in the group ever. I was a good audience, and
Yeah.
I was an honor student, and co-captain of the swim team, and but I was never the guy who was trying to be funny.
Hmm.
But I knew guys like that, and
Hmm.
so I was using those people as a springboard at the beginning. So people that I knew that were like that, and the need, to, uh, to get the laughs and all that, because they're insecure, and it was a way of, getting recognized, a way of building themselves up. And so I understood that, and that was sort of uh, the base that I used for the character.
I gotcha. I gotcha. And did Garry Marshall, how would he, so he did, I'm actually now I'm thinking to myself, he did direct, didn't he as well?
He directed some episodes. He
Yeah,
did. Um, but Jerry directed like 95% of them.
right.
Garry did direct several episodes. Yes.
What was he like as a director? Was he
He
more of
was,
an actor's, director, or where was he at?
he was both. He was great. And with all his experience with writing, but being around it for so long, I guess, with Dick Van Dyke Show and The Odd Couple, and working and seeing Tony Randall and Jack Klugman work, and so he had a good communication with actors, but then he also had such a great sense of the script and
Mhm.
writing, so that he kind of bridged both, which was very good. It was a because usually directors are, like you're kind of, I think, intimating, they have strengths. Some are more actors directors, and some are more cinema, about the cinematography. They were an editor, or they
Mhm.
were
Mhm.
a cinematographer, and so they don't know how to talk to actors, but they know, how to set up the visual aspect of it really well. And but Jerry and Garry were in a different class. They really were. Um, they were unique, and it was. If you ask Ron Howard,
Hmm.
you know, who influenced you a lot. And for as director, I've heard him say in interviews many times that Jerry, you know, was
Hmm.
had a big influence, and he learned a lot from Jerry.
Oh, I could totally see it. Now, of course, one of there's two very famous people that were around that set. One, of course, Robin Williams, and the other one is John Lennon that I've heard about because I've had Anson on, I've had Marion on, I've had Henry on,
Yeah,
all fantastic, by the way. But what was your experience? It's so interesting to see someone else's perspective. When Robin Williams came into the picture, what was that like to see him that first time?
it was quite an experience. It was, it really stood out like a beacon. What happened was they were having trouble casting that role, to play Mork, this,
Hmm.
outer space, some guy from outer space, and it was a different episode, very different episode. And the one guy, and then finally they didn't have him cast until like Thursday. Thursday was his first day on the set, and we'd been rehearsing Monday, well, read through Monday, and then rehearsing Tuesday, Wednesday, and
Wow.
like, well, who's going to play more? and and I didn't have, and Thursday is camera day, so my call would be, depending if I wasn't in the first two scenes, they wouldn't call me in early in the morning
Hmm.
because they were going to work on those. So I get a later call, so I had a later call that day, and I remember walking onto the soundstage, and there was this buzz. There was just this electricity. It's hard to describe. Uh,
Wow.
I could feel it, and then people are going, "Wait do you see this guy? You can't wait. This guy is unbelievable." And,
Wow.
and I go, "What? And it was just everybody was buzzing about it. And then I got up into the bleachers and was watching him rehearsing a scene, and it was like, what this guy is from outer space. It seemed like they found a guy from another planet. um and as it turned out, besides Robin, he's great at, he's so fast and improv.
Hmm.
So he started coming up with adding things that weren't in the script. And I later found out that he used to do in his comedy act like an alien routine with a lot of sound effects and this and that. So
Yeah.
he was throwing some of that in there. But then he was just coming up with all kinds of stuff, and everybody was like, "Holy shit!" You know, it was that it was really an experience. He, like I said, it just stood out like a beacon. And then it was like, and then by Friday there was so much buzz that we find a lot of networks from ABC executives came to watch the show, and they never came to watch it, but they all came. And then, like a week later, we go, "Oh, Robin's got his own show." Mark and Min. It was crazy.
Wow. I
Yeah,
mean, that's something to have experienced. I mean, that really is.
yeah.
Geez. Now, another thing is I had read this and I'm so curious. Did Were you the first one to come up with that line, he's jumping the shark? Did you say that line?
Ron has said that in an interview, and um, I guess I did, but he was the only one who heard it. Because what happened was, um, I was starting to get, and Ron too, we
Uh-huh.
were getting a little disenchanted with, um, and this, with where the scripts were going,
Hmm.
because I think what happens is the network saw how popular the Fonz character was, and and when he did this, while he taps the jukebox and it starts, and he does, and then they started having, it grow, and he started doing things, like, you know, stop all the animals from making noise, in the woods, and 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 other things, and like he's Superman, and it was starting to, I thought, get a little ridiculous, because the network saw that, and then they would insist, do more of that to the writers, do more.
Hmm.
But then they don't realize it starts to become, over a caricature. It starts to become ridiculous. In my mind, I thought, and Ron felt that way too. And then we read we read the script about the episode out in California, and when we all go out there, and then we read the part about when he's challenged by the California kid to on water skis to jump over the thing where the shark is and all that.
Right.
So is it like after the read through, Ron says, he tells the story. I went up to him and I just, I'm like looking like this, and I turned to him and I said, now they got him jumping a shark like that. Now they got him jumping a shark or something. So, Ron remembered that. And so he said I made up that thing, but I didn't make it up with in relation to what it means now, where when a TV show starts to, kind of, it peaked and now it's starting to go downhill. I didn't, come up with that. I just happened to say that line.
Oh my gosh, it's so famous. What about I realized Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams had Laverne and Shirley, but did you get to know them as well?
A little bit. I didn't get to know them that, because they were shooting their show on the soundstage next to ours. So we'd see them, we'd run into them, but, and at some events, but, I didn't have a lot of interaction. I didn't do, some of the other actors did episodes where they crossed over, where they had Richie and Potsy get involved in a storyline of theirs, or the Fonz. I never crossed over, so I didn't get. But I started to get to know them a little bit more. Cindy, especially, and then more recently, God rest her soul, I still can't get over that Cindy is gone. I wound up doing a play with her. It's probably 4 years ago now, and we were doing it in different cities. We were going to all different cities, and she was playing my wife.
Oh my gosh!
So I got to really become closer to her, and so it was later for me. We were friends, but it became a different thing when we worked together doing this play.
What was she like, by the way, as a person?
She was the sweetest, warmest, most so genuine, and just made you feel so good to be around her. And she was funny. And just so, what a lovely woman. And I was heart sick when I heard, because I didn't even know that she was sick, and it was really I really got upset by that.
I can understand.
Yeah,
no, I get it. The other cast member, unfortunately, obviously, that passed away was Tom
Bosley. And Erin Moran.
Oh, and Erin Moran, of course. Yeah. But well, actually, in either of their cases, did you either go to the funeral or go to a memorial with the rest of the cast, anything like that?
Yeah, I did go to Tom's funeral and the not a memorial, but to the funeral and the service and all that. And I got up and spoke at Tom's funeral. Yeah. Erin, no, because she was at the time in Indiana, and they didn't have anything in California, and we didn't go to hers, but we did something at Marion's house, sort of in we did our own at Marion's house, like our own memorial to Erin and celebration of her life, and did it sort of privately on our own.
I think that's wonderful. Now, as I said, I've had them all on pretty much on the show, and I've been fortunate enough to get to know them a little bit. But Marion, I know that she's very close with Henry. Like they almost have like an ongoing like lunch or whatever. How is your relationship with Marion? Do you stay in touch? Because I know she thinks the world of you.
Yeah, we do. I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been meaning to call her. I love Marion, and we have a great relationship, just great. I'd go over when I was still living in California. I recently moved about 6 months ago. So, she only lived about 20 minutes from me. So we'd stop off sometimes and have dinner, my wife and I, and sometimes Anson and I would go over, and we'd stay in touch. Absolutely. But I'm glad, because I want to give her a call. I miss her a lot.
Well, good. Hey, if it's a reminder, then that's great. I love
Yeah.
that. Hey, now look, you left Happy Days after the 7th season, I believe it was. And
Yeah.
one, why? And two, did you have any regrets by leaving?
All right. Good question. Why? There were several reasons. One of them I mentioned earlier. First of all, I had now been playing the same character for 7 years, and I always wanted to have a career where I play lots of different kinds of characters. It could be comedy, it could be drama, and all different kinds of roles. And back then, with only 3 networks, you can get typecast much more readily, because 50 million people are watching us on our show, as opposed to now with cable and internet and so many different shows. But so back then, typecasting was more of a issue to reckon with, and I knew, and I wasn't like the character, like I said, and now most of the roles that I was getting offered during the off season were, something like that, and I saw the handwriting on the wall that this is going to be tough to break out of. So that's one thing, and and on a creative level, it was like, and I felt the scripts were starting to degenerate, or go down in quality. It didn't feel the same. It's hard to keep a show after 5 years, they say. It's really hard. And we were in our 7th season, to keep it fresh and not have it get to be stale or something. So that was one reason. And then, well, those were kind of 2 reasons, I guess.
Good reasons, by the way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And those were the 2 main reasons, actually. I guess both of those, and my desire, like I said, to it was like, okay, it's time to move on. And I was still young. Some people thought I was crazy because, you steady money and all that. But I felt like all I've done is it's helped me a lot on the financial side, and I'm in a much better place than I was, and I was doggedly determined to play all kinds of roles. So that's why I left, and it was tough, and I made it tougher on myself, because I got with a big agency, and I said, I don't want to go out on television. I don't want to do, if it's a TV movie, maybe, but I just want to try to do film and theater. I've been doing a TV series for 7 years, and I felt that I really felt you could do better work on film and TV, because you're not cranking them out so fast, and there's a lot more time to pay attention to all the details. Movie, could be shooting one, a 2-hour, 1.5-hour movie. It could be 2 months working on that one thing.
Yeah.
So you can get it. And I wanted to do that. So I kind of turned my back on television for that year or so. And then it was like hitting, what a shock when, I couldn't get an audition for a film. I went 6 months, and I couldn't even get into, read or audition. I did some theater, so that kept me kind of sane. But and then eventually I just said to my agent, okay, I'm ready to do. I'll do television again, and let's look and see what's out there. And then I started getting some parts, some that were still a little comedic, but then it would be something that was a little bit different, and then that sort of opened the door a little bit, so that somebody could see me that way, and then they gave me a part that was even more different,
Yeah.
And I played a psychiatrist in one, and then I played, I played a hard metal rocker in an episode of Chips.
Oh, I saw it. I saw
Yeah,
it. Yeah, I
but
saw that one.
Little by little, and then I got an independent film where I played a retired semi-alcoholic retired baseball player, kind of and alienated with his son. So that was a whole other thing, and some other independent films that I got to really flex a little bit. And so that it opened up, and then I had a recurring role on Glee, and then
I remember that too.
Yeah, and so that helped. That helped. Oh, look, there's Don doing, playing a dad, and so I got more independent films. And then now what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years, I guess because now I'm at an age, and I certainly I can't look like I did back then.
Yeah,
and I'm in a different bracket. And in the last 4 or 5 years, I got busier with film work than I have in the 10, 15 years prior.
Wow.
I've done like 5 or 6 films in the last 3, 4 years, and very different. I literally went from playing a pastor, small town pastor, to a polygamist on my next film. And then I played a prison guard in a film, and then I played a king, and then I played a career criminal, which had some comedy in it, and then I did a Western. That's my first Western,
Barhaven,
which just came out, and on Amazon, and then I did a film called Lost Heart that I really liked, and I won some nice awards for it. People could see it. That's when I played a pastor, but he's a little bit eccentric. He's not your typical pastor. It was a good role, and so people could check those out on Amazon and some others. And I also directed somewhere back in and all that. I directed 3 films. Two of them. One is called Moolah, and the other is called The Last Best Sunday. And they were great casts, and they won some awards too, and great experience. And I'm proud of those films. We had to shoot them very quickly. We didn't have a lot of money, and it's tough. But Moolah, both of them. One was Last Best Sunday was pretty heavy drama. Great performances by the 2 leads, Douglas Spain and Angela Bettis. And Marion, I cast Marion Ross. She has a great cameo in it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So Don, looking at it, then do you have regrets for having left after the 7th season? Or is it like, no, I'm glad I made that decision?
I don't really have regrets about making that departure. Sometimes, when I'm worrying about money, I go, well, when I'm worrying about finances, if I had stayed those years, but but it's more about, I think the one thing I would have done differently is maybe I wouldn't have said to my agent, I'm not doing TV for for a while, because I think that might have hurt and kept me from. I think I could have broken out of it easier and quicker, because I could have taken roles that were a little bit different sooner. That it took a while for me to do what I was saying. That it took a while. So if I hadn't have left television for that year or two, I think it might have been. I think I would have done that differently.
I got you. No, I think that's very fair. Hey, the one thing that I wanted to ask you too is you actually did, this was a little while after, but you did Charles in Charge with Scott Baio. Was that one of those where it was like, obviously you knew Scott well. I mean, he was on there for a while. Did he reach out to you and say, hey, I'd love to have you on the show? Or was it just,
that's what happened. He called me, or I think he called me personally, so not going through the agents, and said, hey, there's this episode we're doing, and there's this role, and I could just, I think you'd have a lot of fun with it, and It would be great to have you. And I said, oh, well, that would be fun, to be on his show and have him direct me. And
Oh, he
I don't,
directed you. I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah, he was directing a bunch of them.
Oh, wow.
A lot of episodes I think he directed. So so it was a blast. It was a fun little role. And yeah, and like I said, I cast Marion in Last Best Sunday, and I'm trying to think who else. I I was gonna no, I guess I haven't. Well, I didn't do enough. If I'd done more films directing, I would have tried to cast,
Oh, I'm
Henry and something.
sure. I'm
Yeah,
sure. Did
yeah,
by the way, this was way early on in the interview and it hit me and I was like, "Oh, I meant to ask you.
yeah.
Room 222. You did the last episode that they shot. That is what I had heard and it never I read something like it didn't come on or something like that. But
Yeah, I'm not
yeah.
even sure of the story myself, but I think it was getting near. It might have been near the end, and I didn't even realize it. Or maybe it was the last season. It wound up
Yeah.
being the
Yeah.
last season. Um, yeah, I they were having some contractual, uh, negotiations going on with David Jolliffe, and so so they brought me in to play this new character that I
Yeah.
guess in case they never resolved it with David. I
Right.
think so. I did this. It was just a one episode, but then yeah, I didn't hear what happened after that, and it might have been the last. I don't know if that was the last episode, but you heard that my episode never aired.
Yeah,
Huh.
that's what I had heard that it never actually aired. I don't know. Was Karen Valentine on at
Yeah,
that point?
I
Do you
think
remember
so.
do you
I think
remember her at all in it?
I don't know that I had any scenes with her, so that's a
Okay.
bit of a blur. That's a bit of a blur to me. That particular. It was
That was your first, yeah.
my first one out in California. Yeah.
Wow.
So
What Oh, go ahead, please.
no,
Oh,
that's
I
it.
was gonna the other one too. I'm sorry, because I just get excited about some of these shows. But one was Star Trek Voyager, which
Yeah.
I'm a huge Trekkie, whatever, but I don't know if you are or you were, but what was that experience like? Because you were
Yeah.
Dr. Caden, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was great. That's another example of, I went in to audition for that, and I was really happy that I even got the audition to play. It was this doctor who was coming up with these evil schemes.
Yeah, it's
really
good.
this.
I saw it. You did a great job.
Yeah, and so I went in and I worked on that, preparing for that one, and when they told me I had the part, I was pretty excited because this would be very different.
Yeah.
And it was I was a Trekkie with the original series, the original one.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I watched them over and over, but I didn't really follow it after so much, so I wasn't even that familiar with Voyager, but it was a great experience. The people were, all really lovely to work with, and it was a two-parter, and so I got to be around a little longer.
Wow.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was fun.
So taking it to a whole nother direction, go on now and you become a vocalist basically. And it sounds like, I mean, first of all, the only thing I knew was that you had that pop song, early on, and which actually I think broke the Billboard 100.
Oh yeah, it was top 40, made 40. The single that was an album. Yeah, what happened? I was a singer before I was an actor. The truth is,
Oh wow.
yeah, I was pursuing it. I started going to a school in Manhattan for singing and acting and dancing, which I didn't care about. It was mainly the singing and acting, but that was my first love. And as a result of being in this school, I got picked to be part of a nightclub review of teenagers. We were 14, 15, 16-year-old, seven
Wow.
of us. And they put us in this review, the school, because the guy who ran the school was an old vaudevillian guy, and he created this act. And so I was asked to join it. And I spent the summer of, I was turning 15 that summer, performing in this nightclub thing in the Catskill Mountains, which was a resort area upstate New York, and all the hotels. And, you know, I was up there the whole summer. You know, we were doing like 4 shows a week, that kind of thing. And I was loving it, you know, loving it. But then I switched gears. You know, that kind of music, which I loved, the standards, you know, the great jazz standards and the American Songbook. I loved doing that. I was a huge fan of, well, of course, Sinatra and all those, Nat King Cole and Dino and Tony Bennett and some of the big band, Joe Williams with the Count Basie band.
Oh yeah.
But then I got introduced to Bobby Darin, and I got to tell you, Bobby could do that kind of stuff as good as any of them.
You saw him, right? Like when you were younger. I remember reading something about that. Like you were like 18 or something like that.
I was 18. I saw him at the Copacabana twice.
Wow.
And you know, he was amazing. But some people, you know, think of him mainly from his early rock and roll stuff, but that was not what, that was a means to an end for Bobby. And he could do, you know, the standards. He could do jazz. He could do blues. He could do folk. He did a whole album of Ray Charles. And he did a gospel album. And to see him on stage, so he was a big influence on me. And so when I started doing I put the music aside after that summer. Do I need to turn this on?
No, you're good. You're good. Okay. Yeah, you look good. No worries.
So then I started getting, you know, there were some great movies being made, great movie makers in the late 60s, mid to late 60s, early 70s. And it really influenced me. You know, there were the movies like, you know, The Graduate came out, and then The Last Picture Show, and you know, some of the Paul Newman movies, you know, and then, you know, of course, The Godfather, but there were a lot of really great films. And then I got my guy that I got influenced probably the most was Nicholson, and it was his early part of his career.
Like Five Easy Pieces, those kind of.
Five Easy Pieces. Five Easy Pieces was the first film of his that I saw, and that was like, oh my, you know, it was like it opened up another window. Yeah. And I became a big Nicholson fan. He was fantastic in that. And then, you know, then of course after that he did before Chinatown, The Last Detail. And then Carnal Knowledge and Chinatown. And then I got to meet him because they were shooting Chinatown. They were shooting Chinatown at Paramount.
Oh, come on. Seriously, you met him?
Yeah, and we got to talk for like 20 minutes. And I was like, oh. I got back to the Happy Days set. I said, Ron, you know, I just got to talk to Jack, you know, for like 20 minutes. It was unbelievable.
What did you talk to him about? I mean, that was your moment. What was it? What did you talk to him about?
Acting and all the movies that, you know, I was saying, oh, you know, I love the scene that you did here. And then when you did this, and, you know, and then I asked him some questions and about what was going on, and you know, a little bit about acting. And he was great. He was great. He made it so easy. That made my, you know, it was like I met my boyhood idol, Mickey Mantle. It was like that.
That is the coolest. I mean, seriously, Don, I'm so envious. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So what I was getting at is that I saw those kind of films, and then I put the music aside because that kind of music, it was hard to do back. The standards and all that was being looked on as passé back then in the 70s, like my parents' music. So the first album, they wanted me to do more pop and rock kind of stuff. So it was a good experience. It wasn't the kind of music that I felt really comfortable doing. But now that when I decided 9 years ago to put my own kind of show together, like a nightclub act, doing with, leaning heavily on the jazz standards, jazz, blues, and Great American Songbook. And I put it together, and I did the first show, finding some great musicians, and at a jazz club in LA, and it went great. People were like totally surprised, and they weren't expecting it, and they're like, "Wow, we didn't know you could sing like that." And I said, "Yeah, well, this is what I did, before I
Wow.
was acting," and it was started going great, and I started doing clubs in New York, and jazz clubs there in LA and some other places, and then it led to me doing it my first real album. It was called Mostly Swinging.
Hmm.
Did it with a great big band and
Oh,
wonderful musician, trumpet player, and he produced it and he arranged everything. A guy named Willie Murillo, incredibly talented, and it swings. It really swings. And so that one, and now I have a new one. It just came out recently called New York High, and there was a single called New York High, and it was on the chart in the UK. I don't know if it's going to do. I don't know what it's going to do here, but
that is incredible, though. I mean, that you're charting in the UK. You must. I mean, that's really cool.
it got up to number 6 on the Heritage chart. You could
Oh,
look up
that's
the Heritage
awesome.
chart. So I was real excited. This was just fairly recently. So I'm hoping, it's harder to, without spending a lot of money, it's hard to to push the music and get past the noise. And
Sure.
so I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to, I'd love to get it some more attention here in the States, but we'll see, we'll
How
see.
for people that are listening, Don, first of all, how do they, if they want to get your CD or whatever, reach out to you, how do you suggest they do that?
Um, yeah, the CD is easy. It's on iTunes. You could download it. It might be on Amazon too, but it's on iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify. You could hear it. Although I'd rather people buy it on
Sure.
iTunes or Amazon. Um, and then in terms of reaching me, that's a. I guess I'm on social media, like Facebook under
Mhm.
Don Most, and also um, Instagram and Don Most One, Don Most One, and Twitter at Most_Don.
And can
So
they, if someone wanted like an autograph picture or anything like that, can you do, I'm just
you know
curious.
what?
I mean, I have some people that are
Yeah.
like, go to my website, or some people are like, write to me here. Can
Well,
they?
yeah. You know what they could do is my producer of this latest album, his email, because what we did was people would order the CD from him, and I was signing like the first 500
Sure.
that people ordered, that kind of thing. So maybe I could tell them, hey, let's offer that again if people want. So they could write to Plateau Music is the name of his company, and it's probably what's the email? Shoot, I can't remember. But if you look up Plateau Music
Hmm.
and Tony Mantor, Mantor, you'll be able to find his website,
Okay.
plateaumusic.com or something like that. And
And
and they could write to Tony,
okay.
and there's a section in there about what we're doing with this album.
Okay, if someone reaches out to me, because obviously I have a fair amount of subscribers, if they reach out and they're like, "Hey, is there any way you can, pass the message on or whatever?" Are you okay with that? I'd rather put that out now than have a bunch of people write to me.
Um, God, I don't know. You might not want to be dealing with all that.
Well, yeah, I know, I know. Well, that's why I'm saying that.
You know,
That's why I'm like, okay, plateaumusic.com sounds
yeah,
good.
yeah. I think that's better.
All right, that sounds good. That sounds great. Don, I just can't thank you enough. I really
Oh,
can't. You're
oh,
just
oh,
a
my,
super person.
thank you. So are you. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Ah.
And it was like we are old friends or something.
Well,
It, it felt really very comfortable and fun. So thank you.
Well, I take that to heart. I really appreciate it, Don. I love talking with you, and I appreciate your openness, and I know the fans are gonna love it. So
Oh, great,
anyway,
great.
just, I appreciate it. Thanks
Um,
so much for being on. I wish you the best.
I appreciate that very much. All the best to you as well.
All right, Don. We'll
Okay,
see you. Bye-bye.
take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. As always, thanks for listening, and please hit the subscription button and the notification bell so that you can be notified when I have a new episode. And also go check out some of my other episodes, like Jerry Mathers, Henry Winkler, Judy Norton, so many. Enjoy.